everybody. Thank you, Rob, and also thank you to Amy for answering the difficult question about accounting before I had the chance to stand up and talk. Hopefully that's where a few of the differences that you might spot throughout this presentation come from. As Rob was saying, this is a presentation, sort of an executive summary of the Lafarge-Holcim report, which I've authored. It was kind of a hypothetical question that got out of hand, and we realised that we should write something on this. So without further ado, I will try to summarise Amy's presentation very quickly. We realised that even tables of this size can't really be read particularly well. There are two broad areas here that summarise the top 20 producers if you include China as an entity. But when we're talking multinationally and in terms of multinational cement producers, China is kind of a black box by itself. It at the moment doesn't interact greatly in terms of sort of having a crossover with multinationals, and Chinese companies equally don't really come out of China too much. That may well be changing, I think, and had a couple of interesting examples there. If we take the top 20 minus Chinese and Taiwanese producers, we can see that Lafarge-Holcim, blue and red is a colour scheme we'll be getting used to throughout. Both have around 11% of the multinational, i.e. non-Chinese global cement capacity, once again by installed capacity. Third is Heidelberg Cement, fourth Cemex, and then it starts to get a little bit more regional with Berlo Group, Ital Cementi, Votorantim, Intercement, and Taihei from Japan. The reasons behind the Lafarge-Holcim merging, at least at first, were that we were surprised to hear of this. April last year, on the 7th of April, it was a Friday at about 5:30, and a press release came in, and I was very glad that we hadn't gone to the pub, because we were able to put it up on the website immediately. Lafarge-Holcim announced a merger of equals. In July, they released jointly a list of preemptive divestments so that their combined influence in any particular market wouldn't be too great. This includes many in Europe, obviously their natural starting positions, their largest markets in Austria, France, Germany, Hungary, Romania, Serbia, UK, and also outside in Canada, Mauritius, the Philippines, and Brazil. And that's before the authorities had even asked any questions. Later on, we were getting approvals for the merger in various smaller jurisdictions where actually there wasn't a lot to approve, where one player was present and the other wasn't, for example. And in February this year, we found out that it would be CRH from Ireland that would significantly expand with the acquisition of €6.5 billion worth of assets. Its 24 cement plants were equivalent to around 25 million tonnes of capacity. 14 of those plants are in Europe. That's where most of the divestments are going to be. In addition to the countries I named just now, we had Slovakia and Spain, Czech Republic, and as well as the other non-European countries, the USA as well was identified as a place to sell. So, moving on. But, there's a but. There's always a but. But, in March, things turned a little bit more interesting in the merger. These are the revenues, earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization and debt of Holcim in red and Lafarge in blue for 2014. And while they had been fairly equal in 2013, Lafarge had sort of slidden slightly relative to Holcim. Holcim has a 20% higher revenue in last year, a 30% higher EBITDA, and its debt was quite significantly lower. So while the capacities are equal, Lafarge wasn't able to use some of its capacities, partially down to a different geographical spread, particularly in the Middle East, is causing problems for its output. And this is just a quick comparison, which you may not be able to see at the back. This is the change in revenue, minus €2.5 million in 2014 relative to 2013 for Lafarge. So this caused a revolt in Holcim shareholders discontent with the prospect of a one-to-one merger with Lafarge. They were also keen to highlight what they perceived to be the role of Bruno Lafont in presiding over this board of performance, however he may have contributed to it or not. And after periods where we thought that the deal might not even happen, a new share ratio was agreed, and Holcim will now contribute 9 shares to every 10 Lafarge shares. This means that it's actually 55% Holcim, 45% Lafarge. So that was an agreement, and one kind of can draw under that situation. And then the good news starts to flow again in April 2015. Eric Olsen, a different Lafarge gentleman, was identified as the future Lafarge-Holcim CEO instead of Lafont. We had approval in a couple of other jurisdictions, in India and the USA crucially. I think the US was the last one. And then in May, there was details coming forward of the board of directors and executive committee and the greater management general scheme of things. So where are these companies at the moment? Lafarge and Holcim. Here we have Lafarge in blue, Holcim in a red, and Lafarge and Holcim in purple. So these are the areas where these countries here, all the purple countries, are where both companies currently operate. They made cement in 65 countries out of 141 countries that made cement. So that's actually it's about a third, just over a third. And you can see why, after much wrangling, the agreement to merge these two companies makes a lot of sense for both. We have Lafarge capacity coming down the eastern sort of border area of Europe into the Middle East and down the southeast side of Africa. Holcim has some more sporadically located parts, but still ones in which Lafarge wasn't present, and also some of these markets, especially in South America, are where Lafarge is present, but it's actually quite a lot smaller than Holcim. Important to note here, this is not a map of Lafarge-Holcim markets because of the divestments that will be coming to CRH and other parties as well. So to summarise the effects, sorry I get this wrong. Lafarge-Holcim will make cement in a total of 62 different countries rather than 65 because of positions that will have to be left or have already been sold in Pakistan, Slovakia and Thailand. In 44 countries, there will be little change on the ground because only Lafarge or Holcim were over there. Selected assets must be sold in these countries listed, many of which I've name-checked previously. And Lafarge and Holcim will take on all of the assets of Bangladesh, Brazil, China, India, Indonesia, Malaysia, Russia and Spain. Most of these markets down the bottom are where they are relatively smaller players, particularly China, India and Russia, where big local players or regional players have most of the market share. I'm going to, before we get to sort of the map of the replacement of this blue box is actually up at all, I'm going to look at the situation in Germany, Philippines, UK and USA. In Germany, the combination of deals with Cemex and Holcim before the Lafarge-Holcim merger has created quite an interesting situation. Holcim started 2014 with 3 integrated plants. Lafarge 2 combined 5 and nearly 6 million tonnes out of 31 integrated for Germany's 19%, which is fine if 2 companies own it. Not so much if one does. So the EC says the Lafarge assets must be sold. But then also on the back burner at the same time is the sale of the Cemex Collenbach plant in Cemex West coming to Holcim. 0.8 million tonnes doesn't sound like a great deal, but actually is sufficient to increase the Lafarge-Holcim share in German integrated cement production from 11% to 13%. So it's how much the local German Holcim delegates knew about the Lafarge-Holcim merger to instigate this other deal. we can only speculate, but it does seem that this position has been optimised very well in a market that is very busy with cement producers and lots of different small plants operating separately. For its part, CRH, Island Cement, Roadstone Holdings, will purchase the Lafarge assets, 2.6 million tonnes. In the Philippines, the party fireworks have come in the wrong order. This is a rare example I want to highlight because Lafarge and Holcim are actually the 1 and 2 in a large market already. So they have nearly 50% of the situation in the Philippines. 4 plus 4, 8 integrated plants, 13.2 is nearly exactly half. So clearly this cannot be allowed. The Filipino authorities said that the Lafarge assets again must be sold, and CRH will buy this here, except for one cement plant, leaving Lafarge-Holcim with 10.5 million tonnes and 40% of the market, which for some reason is okay. This may well be due to what Emmy mentioned, the opening up of the market, the Asian Economic Community later on in 2015. It's always later in 2015. Whether it happens, we'll see. But this is another interesting market because only last week, or 2 weeks ago, a equity venture company, Aviot's Equity Ventures, wants a piece of CRH high already. They haven't even bought the assets yet, and they approached CRH saying, we would like to have a stake in your Philippine cement assets. There's a discussion ongoing there, and that's a way that CRH seems to operate quite sort of under the radar, as it were, in quite a lot of markets where it already is. So maybe they will sell other aspects, other little percentages here and there of other acquisitions to little groups or even large groups. In the UK, returning to base, for our base at least, the UK Competition Commission takes the Lafarge-Holcim down a peg, possibly, depends how you look at it. Holcim, no integrated plants in the UK. Lafarge Tarmac, this is a 50-50 joint venture between Lafarge and Anglo-American, which used to own the Tarmac, still does own the Tarmac group. It has 5 plants and is the market leader on 34% out of 11.6 million tonnes of capacity. That's all well and good for the Competition Commission at the moment, it seems, because they seem to view Lafarge and Tarmac as 2 separate entities still. I mean, in the UK market they were for yonks and many years. But the prospect of putting Lafarge-Holcim in charge of 34% has put the wheels up them a bit, and we see that Lafarge and Tarmac they're viewed as separate by the CC, but what's going to have to happen now is that Anglo-American will sell 50% of Lafarge Tarmac back to Lafarge, so it becomes all Lafarge again. Then 3 Lafarge plants will be sold to CRH. The other 3 will be sold to Aggregate Industries, which is Holcim's UK unit. So for a split second, this number will pop up to here, and we'll have 5 Holcim plants instead of Lafarge plants. All this is very confusing, but eventually they end up in Lafarge-Holcim's hands. So actually, if you compare the positions of Lafarge Tarmac and the Lafarge-Holcim in the UK, they are quite different, and Lafarge-Holcim will go from being a biggest player to quite a small player in this country. In the USA, have Lafarge and Holcim played master stroke? Question mark. Holcim, 9 integrated plants, 11.5. Lafarge, 7 million. Combined is 16, 18.5 million tonnes out of 115 in the USA. 16%, I'll put it in orange here because it's kind of okay. Surprisingly, only 1 small Holcim plant and 1 Lafarge integrated plant must be sold, among other aspects, among other slight facilities, terminals, etc. But combined, this is only a loss of 1.5 million tonnes of cement capacity, leaving 17, which is actually 15% of the US market, and the #1 position in America, which is pretty good. If you appreciate the numbers coming out of the Portland Cement Association for last year, it's growing by 8% plus, the same as expected this year, and probably on and on. They're good time to believe. So this is a great position for Lafarge-Holcim. looking generally globally, we have about 340 of integrated capacity for Lafarge-Holcim in 62 countries. This is controlled, so this is by the 51% method. You can read the country splits here as well. Graphically, this looks like this. The most important takeaway I can see from this is that Asia has a huge part to play in Lafarge-Holcim, and Europe has shrunk significantly due to the sale of those double assets, as it were, in quite a lot of different countries. The second most interesting thing is the number of countries that Lafarge-Holcim is present in the Middle East and Africa is really high, and also the amount of capacity by world region is the second highest after Asia. So this is showing that while it may have a great position in North America, and it may also have a reasonable position in Europe and other areas around the world, it's also positioned well for future growing markets potentially, or for selling assets in future markets, which may help with the debt. So this is the slide that you'll be seeing the most of. This is the map of the Lafarge-Holcim assets as far as we can work it out. We have hopefully enough contrast there. The largest are dark purple, so this is markets where Lafarge-Holcim will be the biggest player in that market. The second largest in a less severe purple, for example Mexico, and then third or lower, so this is just where it has a position of some sort, and then the countries where it's not present at all, in grey. Starting with North America, excellent position in America, USA itself, #1. Canada, also #1. Mexico, #2 after Cemex. It's going to be hard to get ahead of Cemex in Mexico. So this is a really strong area for the new entity. The second strong entity area is down in Southeast Asia, with a very powerful presence. Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines will be really sort of seeing Lafarge-Holcim everywhere, as they do at the moment, but also it's got dominant positions in Australia and New Zealand by virtue of stakes in smaller companies. In North Asia, this is sort of a large area where there isn't so much going on. There are obviously these are two of the markets, Russia and China, that are dominated by local producers instead of multinationals. There's also a little going on in Indochina, but then come to India and Sri Lanka, ACC and Abuja, which are two large Holcim subsidiaries, are responsible for this good position in India. So, who else is on the list? Across the Mediterranean and in northern parts of the Middle East, it's the Lafarge assets that are going to be taken forward in the most part. Morocco has got a really good position. It's #1. This is probably one of the best markets across this region at the moment for stability-wise. Contrast that to Iraq and Syria, where I'm not sure if the plant has actually been destroyed in Syria by ISIS now. Any shaking your head? Not destroyed. Okay. Damaged beyond use for the time being. So, I've lost myself. There's only a small presence on the Arabian Peninsula as well. It's got a 25% stake in Al Safwa Cement in Saudi Arabia. That's one very small player in a market of large players. The UAE may look like it's in dark purple. It is, but the advantage over the other competitors is so close that it's not really a market position. Even in Europe, oh no, I'm with Indonesia. Sorry, I'm saying the good areas. In Europe, it will be good, but it will be less good. We've already discussed the UK and Germany, and it wouldn't be surprising to learn that France and Switzerland, the two homes of Lafarge and Holcim, are markets where it will dominate. In Africa, Africa is best described as patchy for Lafarge Holcim, but that's the case for every multinational out there, especially the rising influence of Dangote Cement in this neck of the woods, and PPC moving its way out from South Africa. there's little highlights around here in Zambia and Zimbabwe. This could be good. This is one of the, possibly the top zones for Lafarge-Holcim expanding its influence into more central, to reach African markets where imports, that's what Amy was talking about, could be less of a problem. Finally, we have Central and South America. This is the area where there will be the least footprint of Lafarge-Holcim, and that's because of a number of factors. Number one is Cemex, which has subsidiaries in most of the Spanish-speaking areas, and then Cementos Argos in Colombia, which is growing as well. Brazil, it has to deal with the likes of Votorantim and Intercement. So this market is sort of cultured by the locals, the regional giants, more than the multinationals themselves. So this is the graph, this is the pie chart from the first couple of slides, showing Lafarge and Holcim's equals on about 11% of pre-merger non-Chinese installed cement capacity. But Lafarge-Holcim will be 1.7 times or 1.8 times the size of either of these, and it'll be 2.5 times larger than Heidelberg. The other decisions, notably CRH rises. So the new graph is looking like this, with Lafarge-Holcim clearly ahead of the other worldwide spread companies. It has 18%, so it's had to sell on a little bit. This is the 3% here, CRH, which is a difference rounded generally. There are a couple of assets that will be sold in India, a couple of other places. Maybe just if I was planning ahead, Heidelberg or Cemex, I might think about this. Heidelberg Cemex, anyone? I mean, that could be the next big thing come a couple of years' time. So that is the markets. We'd like to just fill in a few details if you've missed them on what this could mean inside Lafarge-Holcim itself. A little bit of this is speculation, so forgive me if I get some things wrong. 500 jobs we've already been notified by Lafarge-Holcim will be going in sort of corporate central roles around regional hubs and in France and Switzerland. They were announced last week or so. And we've made a calculation of staff going to CRH based on the number of cement plants to be sold at 200 head count for every million tonnes, comes out at about 13,500. In a Lafarge-Holcim press release a couple of weeks ago, there was a statement that said that the new entity would need about 115,000 staff total. We have estimated, again, by the capacity calculation, that there would be about 68,000 active in the Lafarge-Holcim cement producing sector. If we scale it up, it seems like quite a lot of office and logistics and backroom staff making so much cement. I know they do other things as well, not just cement and concrete, but it seems slightly high compared to the ratios for Lafarge-Holcim. So whether or not this is a starting point, and then there might be some other jobs lost later, unfortunately this will happen. I think that the scope for down on this number, 115,000, seems a bit too good to be true. Another interesting zone, this was highlighted at one of our conferences by Dirk Lechtenberg, who you may know of BW Lechtenberg, the alternative fuels experts. Lafarge-Holcim average a really good, maybe up to the high teens thermal substitution rate for the alternative fuels at the moment. And a lot of that's from Europe. But when they sold some of these plants, it will go down to 10 or possibly less. CRH, by contrast, will go from under 10 up to 30. So it really has all these alternative fuels. Whether that's a great thing or not, and whether the current moderate to low oil price will bite CRH in the ass later, remains to be seen. But while these numbers are borrowed from Dirk Lechtenberg, there's got to be other environmental performance parameters that are also going to be affected, because European plants and North American plants are also the best at dust mitigation. CO2 output generally is pretty good. SOx and NOx are well catered for, and there could be other issues as well. Health and safety might be one of those. If you suddenly lose a lot of very well trained, sensible staff, and you start operating in places where these factors are less of a factor at the moment. Another interesting point that I have no information on at all really is branding. A lot of the markets are used to their Lafarge or Holcim brand cement. Builders may or may not love it to different extents in different countries around the world. Interestingly, when it juggled the percentage of what it owned in ACC and Abuja, Holcim made a conscious decision to keep those separate. But other studies that we've done in the past show that branding in India is particularly important to local producers, to local consumers. So there might be an Indian exception. Most likely, the gradual merging of identities is probably what could happen most likely. There's a few things, potential hurdles. The board has been put together now, but it may or may not have residual disagreement with itself. Maneuverability could be another potential problem. It's 1.5 to 2 times the size of Lafarge-Holcim, and larger companies can be picked into quick changes in situations, take oil price, take a world collapse again, financial problems. Although it should be pointed out, the geographical spread could insulate Lafarge-Holcim from quite a lot of those potential traps, so it's well positioned to weather regional storms. And here are just some areas that may need to be consolidated. Could be where extra salaries may have to go. Fuels and raw material supply, transport, logistics, maintenance, R&D, intra-company trading that should be, and there'll be costs associated with training, retraining, integrating systems that didn't have to talk to each other previously, and some money on working out what to do with branding. And of course, everything is fluid. That's another reason why the numbers that may not tie up with the reports of our numbers may not tie up with the company reports. Future divestments, what about Syria, Iraq and Jordan? These are not performing well for Lafarge at the moment. They may not be able to perform for Lafarge-Holcim in the future. We'll find. So in conclusion, we have in a little over a month's time maybe we'll have the largest multinational cement producer in the world ever seen. 62 countries, this number, 340 million controlled integrated cement capacity, well positioned in established markets like North America and Europe, and recently established markets like Southeast Asia, but also close to rapidly growing regions in the Middle East and Africa. But as we've seen with many mergers in the past, merging could well be the easy part. Thank you for your attention.